Hey, welcome to the Visionista podcast. I'm your host, Jessica East of Noir Marketing and PR. This podcast is for entrepreneurs where we talk about business and work-life balance. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Visionista podcast. I am your host, Jessica East, and I am here with longtime buddy and fellow PR warrior, Jenny Rapson.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. We have had many conversations just through the years about all sorts of things, and I thought that this would be a really great time to talk about professional communications in public. Kind of took a hiatus. I took a break January and February just to kind of chill, gather my thoughts and figure out what do people really want to hear about. And people said they really, really wanted some PR tips. So the biggest public relations tip that I can give anybody is to do pre-work instead of post, dramatic, horrible incident work. So making PR a priority for you with consistent positive messaging about your organization, the people in your organization, if your organization partners with anyone or does any kind of nonprofit work, what am I trying to say? Like helps out in the nonprofit world locally. Those types of stories consistently are really great, just to kind of pad the Google results. So if you say nothing at all and you don't have a very good communication campaign put together, and then somebody says something dumb or they do something dumb, and then all of a sudden everybody, every local place has 4 channels, and then, throw in national news or personal bloggers, then you have a whole lot of hits talking about this one horrible incident. So definitely having positive things out there before something goes wrong, and hopefully nothing will go wrong. Listen to our words today and avoid those things. But pre-planning is better than having an emergency that then you're kind of, flying by the seat of your pants on. So I wanted to talk about some of the things that we've been seeing a lot of lately. The word is cancel culture.
That's
I know
the word.
That buzzword, technically phrased 2 words, but doing a little pre-chat before the chat today, Jenny, you said the web is forever. And I don't think people understand exactly how forever the web is. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. I think we all need to remember when we're posting anything online, whether it's a blog, a company website, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it isn't going to be on there forever. Even if you delete it, screenshots and archives exist. Mm-hmm. And we all need to think before we speak digitally. Mm-hmm. And that's something that so many people have learned the hard way, mm-hmm. but not enough people, because we keep doing it. And I even tell my son, who's about to turn 17, he doesn't have social media yet because we're mean parents, but we have discussed this with him as far as, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, even kids got their acceptances to some Ivy League schools canceled.
Revoked, yep.
Because of online activity and hateful, and I believe it was racist statements. That's what I'm remembering, mm-hmm. but I'd have to look it up to be sure. So it can affect you, even if you're a teenager. You can do something dumb when your brain isn't fully formed that is going to keep you from getting a job or starting your own business or getting clients when you're older. So for those of us who are of a certain age, whether it's 25 or 45, we've got to watch what we say online, even if it's on our personal pages.
Mm-hmm. And that's especially important for business owners. I know a lot of you listening are business owners, franchise owners. Whether you're posting as the business or you're posting as yourself, I built my business. We're going on 9 years now. This is our 9th year. And I'm kind of synonymous with my business. The branding is all set because I'm good at what I do. And people equate me with my business and my business with me. Even though we have a team of 13 now, people know that War is Jessica. So I think when you are building a business and you've been in business for a while, even if you go out as yourself, like if I'm posting things as Jessica, that reflects on the business. So, we talked about business appropriate. And I think it's appropriate for business owners to kind of always be in that mode.
I agree. Especially if you're an entrepreneur. I mean, you can't turn it off. You said you're your business and you guys are synonymous. You are your livelihood. And you and I, as citizens of this great nation, are free to say whatever we want. We are free to think and say whatever we want, but others are free to not associate with us because of the way they perceive our opinions or statements, right or wrong. And so if you and I are thinking professionally, especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you are your business, you are your livelihood, you really got to think what's more important in this moment, sharing my frustration and what I think is right, or continuing on some great business relationships with people that have been good to me in the past and I want to keep working with in the future.
Sorry, my phone started ringing and going off there for a second. I think that's a good point. If you are a restaurateur, you don't, well, you probably don't, I hope you don't have someone at the door, asking people's political preferences or religious affiliations or, sexual preferences as they come in the door. Like you may be able to tell, if a same-sex couple comes in holding hands, or you may be able to tell if someone comes in with a big Bernie t-shirt on where they stand. But, you would serve whoever comes into your restaurant and you would give them the best service you can. You would give them the best meal that you can. You would give them the same price for their steak that you were charging everybody else for their steak. And so I think that people need to remember that when they're saying things online. And cancel culture, we had this conversation several weeks ago. Cancel culture, while it's buzzy and new, isn't actually new. When I was in high school, we used to call it politically correct. And people, I was in junior high and high school, and I would see adults get upset with each other and say, well, that's not very PC. So people were, I don't want to say judging people, but people were choosing who they wanted to associate with based on political correctness. And kind of, I don't know that it had gone necessarily as far as it has today because social media was not around. So it's pretty much just what you were verbally saying to other people who could hear, who were within earshot of your conversation. But people would say to other people, well, that's not very PC. And kind of chastising them, like, your words are not very, very nice. And I remember being very confused because, again, I was a young person and I'm like, well, wait a minute. When people would complain about, oh, I have to be PC. Why do I have to be PC? I'm like, well, but it sounds to me like being PC equals being kind. So why don't you want to be kind to people? Like, you don't want to be mean to people. That's not good. What do you remember about the PC police when we were younger?
Oh, I wish everyone could see me smiling so big right now.
Well, the people on YouTube can. So P.S. Your lips are on point today. Just that is a good color for you. So
thank you so much.
Love it.
I remember a lot about it. I think, I grew up in a very quote unquote conservative background. I think probably what is still described as conservative today is apt for how I grew up. And there was a lot of kindness in my world for sure. But there was also a lot of fear about society changing. And a lot of times that fear manifested itself in unkindness, unkind words, unkind attitudes, closed minds, not even being willing to dialogue or listen to anyone who was different. So you're right. You're very right. That's not new. We just have a new name for it. And it's so much easier to know what everyone is thinking and feeling now because of social media. And I honestly will tell you that on a personal level, ever since the pandemic began, there are some voices on Facebook in my timeline that I have silenced or unfollowed simply because I do not want to have negative feelings about those people. And they're people that I have been connected with, for much of my life. And I liked them a lot better before I knew what they thought about some things. So for a season, I have said it's going to be better for our relationship if I just don't hear what you have to say. I would say I have 80 to 85% in common with you and your beliefs. But right now, this thing that we disagree on strongly, that's really affecting our society at this moment, is causing me to have negative feelings about you that I would like to set aside for now in hopes that we can come back together later. Now, on a business level, I don't know how that's possible, but that's an example of how personally I am trying not to cancel people, because I do believe that we do need to be kind, practice the golden rule, and try to listen to others. There are some things that I cannot listen to right now. And so I'm hitting the pause button for a moment.
And I would agree with that. And it is important to listen to people who have other beliefs and other ways of thinking. I think that's healthy. I think that's how we grow. I also grew up in a very similar background. For those of you who don't know, Jenny and I actually went to the same high school together. So we have many things in common as far as growing up years and background years. And I did not know what I didn't know until I was an adult and I started hanging out with people who did not have the same background as me. And then they would say things and I would be like, oh, what?
Totally.
And tell me more. And, there were a lot of just a lot of things. I don't really want to get into details and like divert into some kind of, political thing or, racial thing. But there were just a lot of things I didn't know because I'm a nice white girl who grew up in an upper middle class family and went to a private school. So I didn't know these things and I wasn't taught about these things because we didn't have friends or neighbors where any of these things applied.
Yeah.
So, when I found out that the world wasn't exactly as I thought, I don't want to say I'm like special or anything, but I had the interest, I guess, to sit and listen to other people and their stories. And then the more people I listened to, the more I was like, oh my gosh, things are not like I thought they were. My experience was very different than other people and their experiences, and that's just within a small space. These are all Daytonians. These are all people in Ohio. That can get even more diverse as you go out of state, out of the country. Many people have many, many different backgrounds that shape who we are and how we think. And so I think being willing to listen to other people is a really great skill that I'm not sure if we're practicing even as adults. What's that saying? You listen to respond instead of you listen to like. Well, tell me then, because I know I just messed that up.
Listening to respond instead of listening to learn.
That's what it is.
So much of our dialogue. And I think from a business standpoint, this is so applicable as you are gleaning, and gaining new clients. You're sitting with a prospective client. You've got to put those listening ears on, or you're never going to know whether or not you are going to be able to meet their needs. And on personal level, it'll help us so much in all of our relationships, but just on a, from a business standpoint, that should be right up there with the golden rule almost, I think, is listening to learn rather than listening to respond.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I do with all of our clients when we sit down for that initial, whether it's an in-person thing. This last year, it's been Zoom and phone calls. But tell me about who you are. Tell me about why you're doing what you're doing. What's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And then I take a lot of notes. I don't say a whole lot that first meeting because I want to take it all in and absorb it and just kind of percolate on it for a minute. My best ideas come to me in the shower or the bathroom, not like, being junior high gross. My theory, and, share this, do this for yourself to be momentarily smarter, take it how you will. My theory is that all of your brain waves like go out and they hit the tile and they come back. And so you have like double brain waves for that brief moment.
That kind of makes sense.
Well, I really think it's just you clearing your mind because, it also helps as soon as you get in the car, after you leave the grocery store, you're like, I forgot that one thing. Or as soon as you get in the car after you leave your job, you're like, oh, I remembered that one thing that was so important. I think it's just clearing the clutter out of your mind. But I like the tile theory. It just sounds very fancy.
I like it too.
But I kind of percolate on things and really try and think about it. And I think that if we're going to treat all of our communications, whether it's our personal Instagram, our personal Facebook, or our business Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, if we treat all of those things like business professional communications, listening to people and finding out, how did we get so different? I have someone that I'm very close to that, purposes of politics, we both started out in the same place. We both started out as like centrist libertarians. And this person went completely one way. I went completely another way the last 4 years. And I've always been very interested. How did that happen? We both started at the same place. How did you go so far this way and I go so far the other way? And I've never really been able to answer that question. Like I've gotten some clues here and there because usually it gets heated and you're like, okay, we have to shut this down. Otherwise stuff's going to get said that we can't come back from. But I think that if you stop for a moment, like take the emotion out of it for a second and just put on your business hat. How can I fix this problem? What does my client need? Think about it for a second. What are they really saying? Take the emotion out. How did they get here? If I have a client that comes up and is very upset about something, how could you do this? Blah, blah, blah. This is all wrong. I'll be like, wait. What's going on? Tell me more. And I wonder if we would go, I was going to say attack. That's the wrong word. If we would approach all conversations like that, like, whoa. How did you get so far over here? I wonder how that would affect all of our conversations, both business and personal.
I think the change would be radical. I mean, for the good. Of course, it depends on the other party in the conversation too. But when you lead with that, tell me more, identify that pain point and please tell me how you got there. You're going to find out how to solve the problem instead of just reacting and getting defensive. I hope people on YouTube enjoy my hand motions there. But
and that's sales 101. Anybody who's been through a sales class, that's sales 101. Find out what is causing them pain and figure out how to fix it. Like that's what they teach you. So,
and there's a level of business, I don't know, you want to call it business compassion. Can we coin a new term to that approach too? I think if you've got an unhappy client, it's so easy for us to panic and go on the defensive. I'm a very emotional person and it is really difficult for me to take myself out of it and to not take everything personally. But that's a skill I think we've got to hone for sure.
Yep. So maybe if that sounds like you and you find yourself, feeling I don't want to say personally attacked because that's taking it too far. But, if someone tells you about a problem and you immediately start feeling bad about yourself. Oh, I'm so stupid. How did I do this? Whatever. Instead of like, oh my goodness, how could we solve this? What has happened? How can we make sure this doesn't happen again? I think that maybe that's something that you could work on yourself. And I struggle with that too. I have been in therapy since I was like 26 off and on. And that's still sometimes, the voice in the back of my head. It's like there's two warring voices. The one that sounds a lot like my mother, you totally blah, blah, blah. And then the other one that's like, wait a minute, like they're not saying you're terrible. They're saying this result is terrible. Let's figure out how we can fix this. So, maybe being a little bit more mindful and hearing what people are actually saying, as opposed to hearing what they're saying and then adding your interpretation on top of it to come up with, whatever you receive from that conversation.
Yeah. And taking it to heart like that is just another side effect of being your own brand, I think, and something that we just all have to guard against. But it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. So keeping, back on the business topic, we said also kindness is key. And I think that is important, to keep in mind when you are dealing with people professionally, personally, whether you're in a service industry or whether you're selling hot dogs, shoes, a product, you still need to make sure that your clients, your customers, their needs are being met, for two reasons. One, you want them to have a good experience so that they will keep coming back to you. And two, you want them to tell all their friends, oh my gosh, I had the best hot dog ever over at this place. You need to go. These shoes are amazing. You need to go buy a pair too. Happy customers, happy clients are the best advertising that a business could possibly have. And I think that if you are running your own organization, that never stops. Whether it's, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, whether it's 2:00 in the morning and, you've been out with some buddies and maybe had a little bit too much, whatever, like you pretty much always have to be on.
As an entrepreneur, I agree. I mean, no drunk tweeting. Put the phone away if you're going to have a couple with your buddies. It's totally fine to kick back and have a couple with your buddies, but you've got to kind of make a plan beforehand to allow yourself to avoid some pitfalls. Drunk dialing, drunk tweeting, whatever. Like I said, it stays on the internet forever. And when your inhibitions are down, is not the time you want to be using your voice necessarily. Because like you said, I mean, happy clients and happy customers are the best. You want your clients and customers to feel valued. You don't want to ever say anything that's an opinion of yours that you look back on the next day and say, oh, this just made a huge part of my demographic feel completely unvalued. So yeah.
We talked about, the web is forever. Some of those ways are screen captures that people can share, and there is no way to get them back. If you are, I suppose, very famous and had unlimited funds, and there was, one person or two or three people who had screen captures, you might be able to pay them off and get them back. But the average person does not have unlimited resources for a blackmail campaign.
Right. We don't all have a fixer.
No, I would like to be a fixer. Somebody asked me once, there's a show, crap, I forget. I want to say it's like HBO or Stars or something. It's one of the channels that we don't necessarily get. But it's called, oh crap, no, Flack. It's called Flack.
Oh yeah, I've seen advertisements. Doesn't it have Anna Paquin?
Yes. Yes. She is not a vampire, though she could be. But she is in a very high profile PR company. They have global clients and they deal with like very large corporations, famous people. And, they have like super cool problems like hookers and blow, one of my friends asked me, oh, is this your life? And I'm like, no, my life is much more boring than that. Like, as far as I know, none of my clients struggle with, sex workers or illicit narcotics, but there's always tomorrow, I suppose. But at least right now, my life and my business is pretty mundane as far as that is concerned. But if you think about some of the people here locally, if you think about some of the people nationally that have gotten in trouble for doing things, some of them are just really wrong and illegal, such as, the people who were breaking onto government property last month. Those things, hackers were involved, other people taking screen captures were involved. I think people figured out probably shortly after they got back to their hotels, like, oh crap, this did not go the way I wanted. They started massively deleting things, and now those things have been found and they are presented as evidence against 250 of them in federal court cases. We have senators who do things that are, Senator Cruz flying for a vacation in Cancun, in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that. People take vacations every time, they have some time off, spring break, winter break, summer, whatever. The optics of that were bad. And, all it took was one person taking one photo, putting it on Twitter, and then everyone had that photo and had shared it so many times, over the course of, I don't know, a half an hour or so. That got out pretty quick. Like, he had to change his return ticket before they even landed. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, I'm not Ted Cruz, to which I say, congratulations, good for you. But so I'm not that big of a deal. Do I need to worry about that? And the answer is yes, you do, because you never know who's watching. Usually it's, I don't want to say your haters because we're not in junior high, but people who watch you out of envy or jealousy, they are going to wait until you screw up real bad. Just kind of like, that gif of Homer Simpson, like kind of shrinking into the bushes.
The shrubs. Yes.
Jillian, you're going to have to add that to the video. So Homer Simpson, like shrinking into the shrubs. People watch, and they're not always people in your corner. And then when they see that one thing you do or you say, there goes your screen capture, and it gets blasted out and you're in trouble. So
that's an excellent point. And I think it also hits all the way back to what you said at the very beginning of the show with, you need to lead with positivity and already have, a PR bank. You need to give your audience, whatever you want to say, some context for who you are. Mm-hmm. If you do make a big blunder, it's going to help you if it's going to be viewed in light and in conjunction with the positive context that you've already set up for who you are. If this is the one thing that people know about you,
it's harder to overcome.
Yep. It's a whole lot harder to, I don't even want to say undo because you can't undo it, but overcome is the right word. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, take last summer, for instance, there was a lot of civil unrest, and a lot of people picked that time. Many of the larger corporations' responses still baffle me. I'm like, just if you don't have something applicable to say, don't say anything. I am a large proponent. Coffee. Why aren't you working? It's been a banana morning. I strongly suggest, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. Also, if you don't have anything useful to say, don't say it. I know I've talked about this before on the podcast. When COVID first hit, everybody you had ever come in contact with over the course of a week started e-blasting you in your email box, this is how we're combating COVID.
Yes.
It's like, I'm sorry, who are you? Like, I ordered a t-shirt from you 5 years ago. Why do you even still have my email? Like, it didn't make any sense. And it was kind of stupid shit that you would already kind of know, like, because of COVID, we're mailing things with the USPS. It's like, yeah, okay. Like,
no
why
brainer.
did you have to send crap to my inbox? And I think after, a week or two of that, collectively, the entire nation was like, stop emailing me.
Please.
It did more damage for those organizations than it did for good. And some of them were updating you every other
Constantly.
week. I'm like, unless you have a vaccine, don't call me. Like, I'm not home. Stop emailing me. It was frustrating, and it made them, I changed my opinion more for the negative of some of those people, because I'm like, why are you emailing me? You have nothing new to update. You have nothing new to say. A lot of the social things that were going on last summer, there were a lot of large corporations that felt the need, saying that with air quotes if you're listening, to make a statement, answer, whatever. They had not been a part of the conversation. They were inserting themselves into the conversation to like say this thing. But then again, the web is forever. It's so easy to go back and see that this statement is really just kind of a fluff piece. Maybe they mean it, maybe they don't, because their board of directors does not reflect the statement they just made. Their senior leadership team does not reflect the statement they just made. Where they choose to have their corporate headquarters or shops or pricing does not reflect the statement they just made. So I think, instead of feeling this immediacy, like, oh my gosh, I have to make a statement, I have to say something. Maybe you don't.
Right.
Maybe you should think about all the things going on in your head, percolate on it for a minute, go take a shower, be smarter for a couple of minutes, and then see how you feel later. We live in an immediate society, but not everything requires that immediacy. And I think that if people would take a minute to pause, tensions can come down. Maybe some clearer, more level-headed thinking can emerge past, fear or rage or disgust or whatever's going on. If a statement needs to be made, then perhaps it's a little bit more professional, even keel, and won't be so harsh. I'm looking for the right word, to say myself, but I think keeping that in mind would be helpful to people too. Not everything is your fight. I tell myself this, I tell my kids this, not everyone is for you, and that's okay. I think the same thing applies in business and some of these social situations that are going on. You can support people. You don't have to be up in the front, screaming the loudest. Like, save that for somebody that it really affects on a daily basis.
Yeah, I hope from that whole experience, specifically with the social unrest, the COVID-19 applies too. But I think businesses, I hope some learned about how to form your statements with like an intersection of thoughtfulness and timeliness, not just immediacy. Timing can be important, and not, waiting forever to say something, but taking the time to determine if you have something to say that is useful and valuable first, using thoughtfulness in that way, and then bringing timeliness into the game, I think is probably a better way to go about it. And we just didn't see a lot of that, a whole lot of that this past summer, spring.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's not necessarily all tied up with national news. That's just, an example that I think everybody can identify with, because that was all over global news. So no matter where you're listening, you know what I'm talking about. On a smaller scale, I have a client 3 years ago. My client is not a municipality, but they work with municipalities, local government organizations. And one of my clients' clients had some sort of issue. I'm not going to go, into specifics because I don't want anybody to know exactly who I'm referring to. But there was an issue. My client's client had an issue, and it may have looked bad on my client. There was some gray area. The client's client contacted them and said, hey, we have this thing going on. This person has made these accusations and we're working on it and blah, blah, blah. We wanted you to know in case you heard anything, because, when you deal with public officials, public offices, the news is more likely to get a hold of those stories, especially if there's any kind of impropriety, whether real or perceived. That's, people jump all over than that.
And it's always a slow news day here. So
yes. It is. And even if just one source picks it up, that's, that could be 10,000 people looking badly at you and your client. So this was going on. As soon as my client got the call from their client, they called me and, immediately we have to say something, we have to do something. What should we say? What should we do? And so immediately I go into my question mode. I'm like, well, wait a minute, because they're freaking out and talking a mile a minute. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Tell me more. Tell me about what's happening. And so they gave me the details, and I was like, well, it sounds like if any statement needs to be made, that it should probably first come from your client, not you, because if you jump in the middle and you start making statements, people who may not have ever known about this accusation that was made are all of a sudden going to be pulled into it thinking, wait a minute, what's going on with this company where they're having people make accusations about them? I said, so let's see where we are tomorrow. And so I was able to calm the client down, go through, some ways that we could move ahead the next day if we needed to, because it was one person making accusations basically on a budgetary line item kind of thing, like, oh, well, this is wrong, we shouldn't have done this, and then other accusations came from that. But we waited a day, and within just a couple hours the situation was resolved. The municipality dealt with that one particular person and the questions that they had, because of course it's one person who takes these accusations and, all this research that they've done and, post it without actually asking anybody who might know the answer a question. So after the people, the client's client were able to talk to this person, they were able to answer this person's questions. They made a statement, the client's client made a statement, and that was the end of it. And so my client, by being willing to listen and just kind of like calm down for a minute, put together a plan. If we need to say something, we'll say it tomorrow. I think was able to avoid what could have been a catastrophe, because then they would have been essentially airing this perceived dirty laundry that was not even a thing. So, that's, small local example. And I think that applies elsewhere. People, you can make accusations about anybody. Mm-hmm. You can say whatever you want. Twitter is a great place to go
to get that started.
It's about anybody. YouTube as well. Just because someone says something doesn't make it true. And before you respond with like the full heat of your PR and legal department, figure out if you have to. Yeah. Sometimes that response can make the whole situation way worse than what it would be if you just ignored it. Those 3 people that are talking from grandma's basement about how bad your product is or your services or whatever, nobody's going to see that or hear that. And if they do, they're going to be like, well, they were sniffing glue. But, if you go in, then it's kind of like, well, wait a minute.
They're on the defense, so maybe there's something to this.
What are they trying to hide? So, and that comes with the calm, giving yourself a minute and not just firing back, let what did my grandmother used to say? Let cooler heads prevail.
Yes.
I think we can all go back to that too.
Yeah, we all need to. The immediacy thing on social media is another thing. Like if I need a minute, those notifications are like pulling me in. I just hit that little turn off notifications for this post button because I can still go back to that and respond after I've had a minute to let my head get cooler and decide if I need to say anything or if I just want to keep that notifications off and let someone else, go crazy with that mess. So yeah, thoughtfulness, just and taking some emotion out of it. It's hard to do, but it's such a necessary skill to develop professionally as well as personally.
And I think it's okay to give yourself permission to not respond to everything. As a business owner, I often feel like I have to, I have to say something about this. I have to be involved with that. Part of being a good business owner, a good manager, a good director, wherever you fall in your organization, part of being a good leader, I guess would be a more broad statement, is putting people in place that you trust to take care of those things. You don't always have to be jumping in because maybe you don't have the full picture of something. You just have this little snippet that you saw that, maybe somebody brought to you, or you saw a piece of, a very long conversation on Twitter. Sometimes you have to dig. Somebody will post something, and then if 37 people respond to it, and then maybe there's like 2 or 3 sub responses that go off of that main response, what did you see? And I think that if you're always asking yourself the question, tell me more, how does this fit in? I want to understand this. And you're looking for all the information, you might be able to really dodge some bullets as far as saying the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing. Again, whether it's personal or professional, having a full, clear picture of what's going on, I think can help avoid a lot of things. Because how many times have we seen somebody, maybe it's even been us. I mean, I've been guilty of this a couple times myself. Like you see something and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And so you're off thinking one thing, and then the next day, the following week, you figure out, I didn't have the full picture.
Right.
I saw this little piece right here. I was missing this whole gigantic conversation, this whole gigantic thread, these 27 other voices. I only saw the one, and that one maybe wasn't as reputable, or maybe didn't have a clear picture themselves. And so, being able to be calm, be thoughtful, be kind, be inquisitive, I think can really help people avoid some of these pitfalls. Because, let's be honest, public relations, keeping consistent messaging is not usually very high on a lot of people's lists of things to do. So if you have 10 companies, 3 or 4 of them are on top of their messaging and communicating campaigns. So if you are the 6 or 7, give me or Jenny a call, because we can totally help you with that. But realistically, people are concerned about selling things, paying their bills, keeping their people employed. And that kind of falls off of the list of things to do today. So when you have something bad happen, most people are going to fall into that larger majority where they don't have a lot of positive things out there, a lot of positive information where people can be like, wait a minute, like this doesn't sound in line with what this company stands for. I don't believe this. If your company doesn't have anything out there that they stand for, and then that negative post comes out, that negative review comes out, it's much more likely that people are going to believe that negative because they don't have the positive. So, I'm not advocating for spending money you don't have. I build a business from scratch. I know there are some months you just don't have any extra. Look for those opportunities where you can partner with people, where you can put out positive messaging, and definitely get that on your list of things to do to help prevent from those things in the future.
I think that's a great next subject for another podcast, is laying groundwork for positive PR on a budget. So there you go. You're welcome.
Notes now.
I mean, I don't know how to do that, but I think you should talk about it.
What? No, you're totally in there with me. Actually, I'm doing some work with the Downtown Dayton Partnership right now. They're in existence to help downtown Dayton businesses who are operating in downtown, not only professional white collar people, but also blue collar people, retail shops, F&Bs. They help anybody who's working downtown and who has a business downtown. And Ohio, you may have heard, our governor was very militant with the mask laws and the shutdowns, and the bars and restaurants had, what was it, a 10 o'clock curfew up until like last week. So, if you're a bar and you're used to being open till 2, that was rough. That was really rough. And there are a lot of people really struggling. And so one of the things the DDP is working on is helping interested F&Bs work on their social media, because that is another thing that, you're busy trying to make sandwiches and salads. You're not thinking about your social media. It's an afterthought, or maybe like, here's our Lenten special, because Lent is happening right now and everybody has fish on Fridays. So, how can you do things better? And so one of the things that I'm working on with my people, there were myself and 3 other agencies that are all located within downtown who volunteered to help out with the project. And so we each have like 3 assigned businesses. And so the 3 I'm working with, we're talking about, how you can do things on your own, because would I be sad if they decided they wanted to pay me and the team for our services? Absolutely not. But these are things they can do themselves too, and so I'm kind of going over with them how to use just your mobile, to take really good pictures. What makes a good picture that somebody's like, oh my God, I want to eat that burger now.
Yeah.
Versus, I guess that's okay. I guess I can eat. There's no immediacy with a bad photo, taking some fun behind the scenes things. So we are working on,
that's really cool,
on those things. So yes, come eat downtown if you are in and around the Dayton, Ohio area. There are all sorts of people still open and would love to make you soups and salads and sandwiches and baked goods. I've got like 2 bakeries, so,
Yum.
Right. Anyway. Okay.
Downtown has lots of good coffee too. I'm just saying.
Yes, I haven't been to my favorite coffee shop in a while. So Holy Grounds over on Wayne, if anybody is listening, that is woman-owned, minority-owned. She's awesome. And she has snacks and comfy sofas. So that's my fave. Jenny, who's your fave coffee place?
I love Ghost Light. I like Holy Grounds. I like Winans. I know it's got more franchises, but it's still local. I love all of our Dayton coffee. Riza's is good.
So you are non-discriminating in your coffee.
I love it local. I live right down the street from Press Belmont. So I have to give Press Belmont a big shout out. They're my local jam, as in, 30-second drive. I could walk, but it would take me about 20 minutes, about 15 minutes. It's on my street, but I live on a long street.
Okay. I was going to say that street must be like longer than what I thought.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And it's cold, but I stop on the way back from all my grocery pickups, and you gotta stop into Press.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. Well, Jenny, thank you for chatting this morning about all this really stuff. Fun. I hope if you are listening, you've gotten some good little tidbits that can apply to you and can apply to your business. If you could say like 2 sentences, 3 sentences that kind of summarize everything we've chatted about today, that final thought, what would that be?
Put me on the spot, girl.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I'm sorry.
Think before you tweet, be kind, And when you do have a problem to solve, take a breath first.
I feel like we need a standing ovation after that.
Stop.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So I will put Jenny's contact information at the bottom if you'd like to reach out to her. As always, feel free to reach out to me and the team. Thank you for listening to The Visionista.